Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to Trailhead DX, and thank you for coming to our session about how to automate the release process via the package and deploy APIs. Our main goals today is we want to reduce the amount of errors that can happen if you're using the UI. We also want to reduce the amount of time you may be spending when you're deploying to more and more customers, and to overall talk about how you can organize the release process. I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Erica Walker, and I have been working on the ISV team for the past year. I've been working at Salesforce for 3.5 years, primarily on the Marketing Cloud. So this is my first presentation about the CRM, and I'm excited to come to this with you. Heyman?
Yeah, thank you, Erica. I'm Heyman Javle. I'm also an ISV technical evangelist. I've been with Salesforce for 3 years, worked with services for 2 years, brought that experience into the partner ecosystem, and I work with core partners, advising them on how to adopt the platform.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, to our favorite slide. You guys may have seen it before, our forward-looking statements. So anything that we say today, we want to make sure that you're basing it off of what is currently available to customers and to partners. So we may be talking about a few things that are up and coming, but just make sure that you're focusing on any decision making based on what is readily available. Okay, this takes us on to our key objectives. And the things that we want to talk about is we'll start talking about how we recommend versioning for your release process. So you may be using the API, but if you're just using that, don't have a proper organization and process in place, you just may be quickly messing up your release process. So we'll start out by talking about that. The next thing we'll talk about are different ways that you can distribute packages to your customers. That could be through the UI or various ways in the API. The next item that we'll talk about is the heart of what we're looking at, and that's the push upgrade API. And finally, Hemant will show a demonstration of what he has done with code and the push upgrade API to give you an idea on what you can also do for your customers. All right, now the package release process and versioning. Many of you may already be familiar with it, but I want to level set and take a look at this. So you may be starting you may have just released your app into App Exchange, and it may be picking up, and you find as you get more customers, you're spending more and more time on the release process itself. That's the main thing that we want to work on, is make sure that you're spending less time, that you have less errors, and that you're organizing as a whole. So the way that we recommend doing that is through major versioning, which is going to be basically the first number in our process, and that's going to be for all new functionality that you have. As you go through, you may have something that's a minor upgrade or maybe a suggestion from your customer, but not warranting a full version, so that's going to be the second number. And if anybody's been involved in the development process, you know that bugs happen, and so that's going to be the third portion of that. Heaven forbid we have bugs, but as they happen, that's what we will deal with. So the reason we want to have this numbering system is that so you are aware of what kind of version is going out and what to expect, and also your customers are aware to set that process for them. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the UI and how you can release via the UI. Now the functionality is solid for this. The issue that we run into is that it's not scalable. So if you are trying to release to many customers and improve this and reduce your time, this is not the best way to do it, but we want to review it just so you see how the process actually works. Hey, Mom?
Right. So how many of you have used push upgrades through the UI? All right, quite a few. So I'll play a quick video if I can correctly put the clicker. Yeah. So what you do is you come to your packaging org. This is the ISV packaging org. You come to your setup. You search for your package manager. You come to your package manager, and what you do is you search for the package that I've created. So I click into the map package, and once it opens up, I can see different versions. So I go to the versions tab, and in the versions tab, I have something called a button for push upgrades. I click that, and I go there. I click schedule push upgrades. And once it opens up, I have to select the version number that I want to push. And I get all the customer subscriber orgs which are in there. I can filter them by production orgs or by the sandbox orgs. And I select them. I select the org which I want to push upgrade to, and I click schedule. So as you can see, there's a lot of click paths to remember. It does require to remember all the click paths and someone like a release manager to always go on the UI and click through this and then select particular customers, and that's how you do it through the UI. So maybe there's a better way. So Erica.
Yeah, thanks, Hemant. That's a lot to go through. Good if you just have a few customers and you're starting out, but what we really want to do is focus on the APIs. And so what we're going to be doing in this slide, in this area, is we'll talk about the different ways that you can actually use the API in the release process. And the first way is through the standard metadata API. This allows you to install, upgrade, or uninstall your package. So it could reduce the amount of errors. It may help you with your process itself, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't allow you to scale. You'll run into a similar issue that you do with the UI, where you're only able to deploy to one org at a time. The second that we're going to talk about is the tooling API. So this does allow you to automate, manage, and unmanaged packages, but it doesn't involve anything that has to do with deploying, especially not deploying to multiple orgs. So now it brings us to the push upgrade API, which is really what we're talking about today. This is scalable. This is going to make it so you are spending less time on the release process itself, more time on development, and have less errors as well. And if you do have errors that happen as you're deploying, you can build it so that you can see and be more intelligent with the errors that are happening. And even better, you can schedule this so that it's best for your customers, so you're releasing at the appropriate time for them.
All right. Time for some demo. So let me set this up. True story. Erica and I were at the partner forum in Chicago, and we were in a session with DX, and one of the partners had questions. Okay, this versioning all is good. I've created my versions, and now I want to push this to the customer. But oftentimes, a customer comes to me and, hey, I have my own maintenance going on. I don't want the version to go right now because I'm doing some changes at my end. So is there a way, that I can let you know that, postpone it for a few days? So imagine an ISV release manager. He gets hundreds of customer requests. He has to put it in somewhere like an Excel file to remember, which customer wants the upgrade at what time. So that's a labor-intensive work. You can't really automate that. So what we have done is, say I'm an ISV developer now. I have my app on App Exchange. It's doing well. And I have a similar scenario now where Erica is my customer. She comes to me, hey, man, I don't want this at this time. I want this, 3 days from now. So what we have done is we've implemented a custom Apex code. And we're going to use the push upgrade API in that to call that API through the code. And I'll show you how you can automate that process. So this is my ISV packaging org. So as you saw in the previous screens when we went through the UI, this is where you see all the push upgrades that have happened. So what I've done is, I've given a customer a form, but to mock that form, I'm using a postman. And what I'm doing through the postman is I'm sending certain information. So here you can see I'm sending org ID so Erica, who's the customer, she'll send her org ID, the desired version that she wants to go to, the package name, and also the schedule start date that she wants the package to go through. So the time right now is 1:08, so we have to put the time in GMT. So I'm going to put it as 29 to be realistic. So I'll send the request. So what is happening here is, if you can see, the endpoint is at my packaging org. So you can see the my domain is actually the my domain for my ISV packaging org. And I've created an Apex class at this endpoint called push upgrade. And I'll show you the code in a minute. But so when I send this code, the code handled all the information that was sent, and it sent an appropriate response saying the push request was created. So this is the customer org. As you can see, this was on package version 1.1. And if you remember, Erica, sent the information that I want to go to package version 1.2. So let's see if it has upgraded by itself, because I think it's time now. It's 1.9. Right. Maybe I'll try that again. It takes a few minutes to propagate, so I'll try refreshing it if it gives that. In the meantime, I can walk you guys through the code. So let me open the developer console. refresh this again. Still working on it. Maybe I'll send one more request just to be sure.
This is the beauty of having a live demo.
Live demo,
If
yeah.
anybody's ever done one, you know.
Okay. Let me zoom in. If you can see clearly. Yeah. So what I've done is I've built a custom Apex class, and as you can see, it's a REST resource, so it's accessible through a REST API call, and you can see I gave it the push upgrade slash push upgrade URL. So what it does is, we send the information like the org ID, the desired version, the package name. I'll accept all that information into my class, and I'll do a certain checks. So for example, if somebody sends a version number which is not there yet, then I handle it saying, okay, this version is not there yet. If they ask for a version which is lower than what they are on right now, I'll say, okay, this is a lower version. You should probably try, using a different version. So I take all that information, I do all the checks, and the first step is there are certain custom objects that get exposed when you use push upgrades APIs. So the most important object is metadata package. Here it is, metadata package. So this represents the package that were created in this org. So if I have like 3 packages that were created in this org, those will show up as rows in this particular custom object. So I know Erica sent the package name to me, and I'll just query this custom object to retrieve that particular row using Soccer. Once I have that, the next object is metadata package version. So for every metadata package, we have a custom object called metadata package version. So you can have one package with various versions like 1.1, 1.2, 2.1. So every version will have an entry in this custom object. So I'll query for the version that Erica wants to upgrade to. Once I have done that, there's one more object called package subscriber. And this stores the information about the consumer orgs. So basically, all the customers that have installed my package, the information of all those orgs is stored in this particular object. So I'll query for the package subscriber that corresponds to this. Then I do a bunch of checks, like I mentioned. If the version doesn't exist, I send that information. If it cannot be upgraded, I send that information. So let's assume all the criteria are met. Then I send a call to authenticate myself. So this, everybody should know this. So this like simple, I send my information and credentials. I'm using a connected app. So I'm using the client ID and secret to authenticate. So once I authenticate, I get the session token. And I'll use that token now to do a bunch of calls to perform my push upgrade. So there are 3 things you should remember when it comes to push upgrade API. First is you should create a push request. So you hit an endpoint to create a push request. And then once you get the push request, you'll get a new ID of the row that was created. You take that ID and you create a package push job. So for every customer that I want this push to be going to, I create a package push request. And the third call is then the package push request that gets created. It has a status of created. So I have to change that status to pending to actually propagate that change. So here you can see I'm sending a call after I get all the information. Scrolling. Yeah. And the endpoint here is /services/data and all that thing at /package push request. So I take all that information, I send the information at this endpoint. And once I give the information to this endpoint, it creates a package push request and it sends me the ID of the package push request. So I'll use JSON parser to take that ID and I'll do one more call. So this time the call is at package push job. Let me see. Yeah, package push job. So I use the ID that was given to me and I give the org ID and I do the call to the package push job. And this will respond back saying, okay, it was successful. And once that is done, I call to the package push request again, but with the ID of the package push request, because now I want to change the status. So the status was created and I send a request at this endpoint saying that my new status should be pending. And that's when it propagates the request of actually pushing the version to the customer. So this was a simple code. You could have done this through Java, but I preferred using Apex because I showed you how you can expose a custom REST endpoint take all that information in, compile all that information, call these APIs, and then send accordingly the response back to the customer. I could have also used something like Workbench or Postman to directly call these endpoints, but then I wouldn't have been able to give the control to Erica to actually send that information to me and automate all of this. Just the final check. Fingers crossed. There you go, 1.2. So it did work. It took a few minutes, but you see the beauty of it. The only thing that Erica had to do was go to her farm, send that information to me. I took that information, and with my logic code and with the APIs, I upgraded the version at the desired time that she wanted to. So this is pretty powerful. I've personally gone through the process of creating these and versioning them, and I've always found it difficult. But with the power of the API, there's no limit to it. We have barely scratched the surface with what we can do with this, and there are a lot of ideas out there. So, for example, if you can integrate your LMA or data, so when the consumer installs my package, you get the information about the email ID, the time zone they are in. So you can use all that information into this API and integrate that data to make it more powerful and make it more intelligent. So, in conclusion, what I wanted to remind you guys is, it's a powerful thing. You create a push request, you use that push request to create a push job for each of the orgs, and then you set the status to pending. And Erica, what does Uncle Ben always say to Spider-Man?
It's dinner time? No, just kidding. So he's saying with great power comes great responsibility. So what you want to ensure if you're using the APIs is that you're not quickly messing up your release process. As I mentioned before, make sure you have a really good versioning process in place so that you have visibility for yourself and for your customers. So yeah. Thanks, Ahmed.
Go to Q&A. So I'll let you guys take a screen grab of this. So we have like a trailhead module which is freshly out of the blocks. This explains about push upgrades and all the version. It doesn't specifically talk about the APIs, but it does take you through the process of using push upgrades. And we also have the guide which talks more about this. So any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So the org was my packaging org.
Hey, Mon, do you mind repeating the question just so everyone can hear?
Yeah, so the question was, where was this code running and what was I authenticating into? So I was authenticating into the same org. So the thing is, I used the OAuth thing, but it didn't work for me for some reason. That's why I had to go this, the other route where I had to authenticate into my own org using the call. No, so if you're using push upgrade API and in your packaging org, this particular custom object will have information of all the consumers of that package. That's why it's so powerful, right? You have all the org IDs of your consumers in your packaging org. So why not use that information? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the code was in my ISV packaging org. And the only thing that the customer has to do is send that information through a form. Obviously, I didn't have a form. I mocked it through a Postman request. So I would have a form that will call back to my REST custom class. So the form is like a standard form that every client... It can be a standard web form. It can be my own community, like an ISV community, and I just give them a page to the customer, and they can fill that information. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, instead of me giving it in a community, you can also have your own Visualforce page or any, Lightning page and have that information from the customer right through your app. So yeah, the only thing the customer will have to do is add the endpoint to their remote site settings so that they can do a call to that endpoint. Yeah, we can do that as part of the package. It's really flexible. You don't have to have a web form. You can have your own Visualforce page in your package, give it to the customer. They can come there, they can fill the information, and that kicks a custom code that takes that information and sends to your packaging or its endpoint. Interesting. So that can also be automated. So that's a good idea. If you have this information, you can also have a class that you can probably use the certain kind of API, or any triggers. So whenever a new version is created, broadcast that message to the consumer, so they know when it is ready, when the new version is out. So go crazy on this idea. Yeah.
So if I heard the other question correctly, you do not have to authenticate from your packaging mark to actually do this push the way you demonstrated.
Yeah, we don't have to. Yeah, yeah.
Is
Right.
there any, maybe this goes beyond the scope of this a little bit, but is there a vision of a best practice of using the packaging work as sort of the nexus of that information, or is it best practice to keep that org isolated to just the packaging responses?
It's always the best practices to keep it just for packaging purposes, because for development you should have your own development orgs and move the metadata to the packaging when it's ready to be packaged. Yeah. Yep. How does it fit in the packaging 2.0? So I haven't really thought about that. So I know packaging with packaging 2.0, you can automate this all through the script, but it still doesn't have the feature to push upgrades to the consumer. And when I mentioned, I was at the partner forum, that session was actually DX session, and it was about packaging 2.0, and the partner had question about this. That is not something which you can do with DX right now. So you have to rely on the push upgrade API. Yeah. Yeah, it is. So if you are a partner who has registered, you have the ability to push patches. But then if you don't have the ability to push major upgrades, then you can just log a case and get that functionality added. Yeah. Yeah. So those objects, when you enable that feature to push upgrade, those objects are opened for API access. And you can only access these objects through API or code. You can't access them through UI. Yeah. Any more questions?
Awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
you guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.